All right, we got Shaun here. What do you know? We're back at it again with another tech tip. It's kind of been in the workings. Everybody knew the old springs on the Pro R are, what do you know, clapped out. The thing's sitting like 100% level almost at this point. What do you think, Shaun? She needs some springs?
She needs some springs. She needs a little help.
I mean, we could tighten the springs down, but you've already done it once.
Yep.
They're past gone on that part. Yep. So we're gonna do new springs and
limit straps.
Awesome. And they're from Shock Therapy, right?
From Shock Therapy, and we also custom powder coated it to match the red on your car. So green's gone, red's in.
We're gonna do springs, how to mount and how to take them apart and do everything, and then we'll go from there and do the same with the limiting straps. So here's what it looks like height wise under mine. I'm not looking near as good. Springs are definitely smoked, but if y'all don't know already, we be dropping on Wednesdays and Sundays from here on out. As of right now, that's what YouTube's telling us. Those are the days you guys are watching. Thanks for watching, guys.
Guys, Shaun here with German Shepherd Designs, working on Dallon's brand new Pro R Razor. We're gonna do the spring swap that we talked about earlier. So we've already got her jacked up. Most people have never seen up close how much droop these things actually have now. They're wicked awesome. What we're gonna do after we jack her up, we're going to unplug the electronics. There's a bolt right up here. We're gonna remove this bolt, remove this bolt, rinse and repeat for the other side. Swap those old and busted springs for some brand new powder coated springs, thanks to Shock Therapy and Precision Coatings here in town. We'll also be installing limit straps here on the front. Just a quick pro tip here, guys. When you're pulling these out, they are kind of a pain. So as you can see how that doesn't quite line up, I found the easiest thing to do is disconnect this link. You're gonna lift up on the shock up here. You're gonna twist and pull the arch over this portion right here. And then you should be able to put it back up towards the firewall up here, and then just kind of wiggle the shock out. So you can see it's got that giant hoop that goes over, and your drive shaft goes in between here. So you just gotta rotate this a little bit, and then the whole thing will come out. So onto the spring compressor, then new springs and limit straps. These are a little bit different than your standards, which end right here. And the cool clamps that come from the side don't apply here because I've got this giant press. So what I do is I just rock it back a little bit, equal that out with these, the uppers and the lowers, so it's still pressing evenly. And then that just splits the difference.
Nice.
We just go right in between. Simple. Slides out.
Boom.
Just like that.
Now time for the reds. Say goodbye to the green.
Bye-bye green. No more highlighter. So you can see the height difference here on these lower springs for this Pro. Quite a bit. The upper springs are a little bit shorter on the new. However, the rating on them is completely different. So these are going to compress at a different rate from the stock ones. As you can see, we've got her mocked up here in the vise, and now we're just going to make adjustments on the actual body itself, set for the new springs, put the limit straps on, and back on the car she goes. Height adjustments where we want for the upper spring, for the crossover rings. Now we're placing this awesome clamp by Shock Therapy for the limit straps. Now when I set these, they tell you to set them for about an inch before full compression. I like to go a little bit more than that on these limit straps, because even though yes they are triple strapped, they will stretch a little bit over time. You don't need to reef these down on these bolts that connect these two clamps together. It's just into aluminum, so these don't need to be, you know, 400 foot-pounds of torque on there. That's why, I mean, you can see how small of a tool I'm using. Just good old German, good and tight. We will put these awesome clevises in. This clevis goes like this, and this is where you get your adjustable height. So no longer, even after they stretch, is it going to be too much of a pain in the butt. All you have to do is come through and adjust these two nuts right here, and boom, you have an instant adjustment. So you can tighten it back up if she gets a little too much slack in there. Holding it tight against the across the ring of the shock here, so that when it does pull, it's just pulling up against this. She just goes like that, bolt facing out, so that we can install this. Obviously in would be weird and not so great when it's so close to the spring. Like that. So these awesome straps, for the most part, they come lefts and rights nowadays. The way this works is, you can see the Shock Therapy logo, just like a battle flag. This should always be facing forward. So the Shock Therapy, legible, like this to the front of the car. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna kind of hang this for right now, and we're just gonna take a quick measurement. So it's just hanging from that top bolt. There's nothing real structural or perfectionist about it. All we're trying to do is measure center hole to center hole to see if we've got about that inch. I like 1.25 inches myself because of the stretch. So we're just going to move this a little bit so we get the measurement we want, center to center. This is only going to go in one way. One thing I did forget to mention while I was setting this up was they do include this wonderful little bottle of red Loctite 262. Highly can't recommend this stuff enough. I actually like to put some right here on this, just because this is suspension stuff, and this is stuff that you do not want to come apart when you're blasting through the trails. So we'll torque this down, we'll torque these down, we'll come back to you guys, show you what this looks like on the car. It's about 1.25 inch gap right here. So when this actually compresses, that's where it's going to sit, and that's going to give you that limit from this extending all the way out. And what that does is that's going to reduce a ton of your noise, and on top of that, it's also going to prevent the pistons from bottoming out inside and ripping any internals through here, which is definitely a bad day.
Who can't be excited for some Shock Therapy springs?
Amen. They give you a good starting point. I always make my adjustments a little bit more because I don't always go with the stock springs that they recommend. Depending on everything else, I may change something up. Or I also know that these springs will compress in 100 to 200 miles, or in your case, probably 75. Quarter to half an inch more than what they recommend, because what their recommendation is just a starting point.
Anyway, so yeah, you're gonna do a little, you say a little firmer or a little softer than what they recommend?
Firmer setup.
Okay.
Just over the years, I've made my own notes and seen what's compressed and what's gone to what. Tap these back in. Time for springs. And
who isn't excited for Shock Therapy springs and limit straps?
So I've been asked multiple times why this end of the spring right here and this aren't 180 out from each other. People, Shaun, that's what they say to do, the instructions. They need to be 180 out. They need to be 180 out. Watch the videos, read through the rest of the instructions, and you'll see that sometimes it's called clocking your spring. There's times where this will rub hard on one side or the other. So you start at 90-degree increments, quarter turns. So if you start opposing ends and it's rubbing really hard and binding, then you need to rotate at 90 degrees one way or the other. So yeah, your spring ends may not be 180 out from each other. That's fine. It's okay. It's not gonna hurt anything, I promise. But the idea is, yes, that we do start 180 out. So you can kind of see on this right here, the spring is tilted way more forward, one way than the other. So basically, we're just gonna take it, we'll turn it 90 degrees and see if that's any better. And we just keep rotating until we find a good spot. So, right there's about good. So we'll just start there. We can make any adjustments that we need to after 100 and 200 mile mark. Just makes your life so much easier.
Get you a little bit of room.
A little bit more room. All right, so something else I found super easy. Taking out just the first 4 bolts. These T40 Torxes. Just be careful not to lose these clips, but it allows you to have some flexibility in this fender, and you can get the top of this shock just in there. So what I do is I start off, I put the bottom down in here, push up through here, up into this towards the firewall, then drop it back down. So then when you drop it back down, you can get it inside the cradle that it needs to be in up there. And then you can come down here to the bottom and get this adjusted as well. Limit strap's gonna go right back here. So we will attach that when it's all done. This cool little guy right here, I just bring it up just like that, and it'll just come up through there and latch on. So that'll prevent that from flopping around all over the place when you do compress. So that way it's nice and tight. So we'll leave that off until it's done when we compress it. So what I'll do is, I have the other side tire off. What we'll do is we'll put the tire back on over here. We'll slowly drop it down. That will compress the spring enough to where we can actually slide this in easily over the bolt that goes over here with the new spacer. We'll reconnect everything up here. Just slides right back in here after we plug it back in. And then make sure to put the zip tie up here. That is for this. The white tape corresponds where the zip tie goes. It's gonna sit just like that, and that will plug right back in here. So here's that bolt that I showed you earlier with the spacer. So the new bolt that's gonna go on there, supplied from Shock Therapy with that spacer. That spacer is gonna go there. That nice nut will go right over the top. You reuse the original nut. I like to drop some red Loctite on there, on those threads, right before you cinch it down, just for safety's sake. Again, it's suspension, you don't need anything coming off. You can see right here, the zip tie is back in place. Right there, zip tied right back up, flush cut off so it doesn't grab your knuckles or fingers. Plug this back in right here. This piece just slides right back in place until you feel it click. And then this guy, click right here. It's all your electronics back in place. That's all good, tucked in out of the way. As you can see, smooth here. This is why we don't put that right there, because it would interfere, that strap would just interfere with everything. So right here on the back side, like it's supposed to be, beautiful. This is all tightened up. This is now on here. So this shock is now not fully extended. It is stopped about 1.25 inches out from full extension, which is what we want. Shocks are a little bit different. These are keyed right here in that there's actually little grooves, so that this slot right here is actually facing the inside. So traditionally on turbos, 1000s, all the older models, what I used to do was I would always have this slot facing towards the back. It's perfectly round on the older models. These new Pro Rs, they are not. So that's just something to warn you about. And then also when you're pulling this off, when you've got this on, before you compress the spring all the way, take this bump stop and push it all the way up, as far up as you can. It just cleans it out of the way so that you can get this portion off, the keeper off, makes life easier. I'm not paid by Shock Therapy or anything like that. I just love what they do with the rates on their springs. I can contact them and ask for specific rates. Their straps, probably one of the best clamps on the market, arguably, if not the best, just because of the way it clamps on here with the clevis, the adjustability. You don't have to worry about, oh, I ordered a 25-inch strap and it stretched out, you know, 1.5 inches, and now I have to reorder a 24.5-inch strap and go through the whole thing of putting it back on and off. The adjustability is super nice. And then, like I said, just a super clean install. fish that out in a second. And just like that, drops out.
Word to the wise, we've officially lost a big nut and a little screw so far. So, and we cannot find them, so be careful. We have officially taken the cover off of this to try to see down in here. We took the cover off, like we could not find this big nut. And what do you know, it is right frickin' here. Still can't see it without some light, but it's right there.
Would have never seen that without taking that cover off.
This is where it was. Boom. How happy are you to see this, Shaun?
I am stoked. Because that means my day is almost over. Let's try it.
All right, last but not least, putting the new shock therapy springs in here. And this is how simple it really is. You just bolt on the bottom, bolt on the top, and now the plugs and the zip ties.
Yep, and then she's done.
Springs, we'll see how she rides, guys. I'll let you guys know how it goes. But y'all don't know already, we be dropping on Wednesdays and Sundays from here on out. As of right now, that's what YouTube's telling us. Those are the days you guys are watching. Thanks for watching, guys. You guys want to race with these? Didn't think so. These things are done, clapped out. But these are not, because they're shock therapy springs. Let's do this. All right, guys. She is done, put together. And we got to say thanks to Shaun at Shepard MotoSports.
Shepard MotoSports.
What's the phone number?
503-851-4756.
We got fresh springs from Shock Therapy all the way around, obviously. And look at the clearance it has. It is night and day. And then we obviously got the limiting straps on here now. So good to go. Now we can rip a little harder. We got some more clearance. She's back to sitting where she began, I think, there. Got a lot of height. I can tell just sitting in it.